Welcome to my lecture today. Today's topic is poultry byproducts utilization. Earlier, I have several lectures on byproduct utilization, and in a specific lecture, I have discussed about all the different kind of byproducts briefly as an introduction and overview. Later, I have discussed about the utilization of different byproducts from the other animals like utilization of bones, blood, intestine, hide and skin or glandular byproducts, etc. But today exclusively I will talk about the utilization of poultry byproducts. Here we can talk in two different categories. One is the edible byproducts, another is the non-edible byproducts. In the edible category, we have the edible organs, fat, and sometimes the skin is also removed, but it is hygienic and from healthy animals, so that can be used for edible purpose. So first part I am going to talk about the use of edible byproducts, and the second part about the use of non-edible byproducts, where the non-edible skins and their utilization, extraction of fats and collagen or making gelatin from that. Sometimes the whole skin is removed along with the feather. So again, that can be separated, feather and skin, and processed into separate byproducts utilization. And then another major byproduct is feather alone. So briefly I will talk about the making of feather meal and its use. Now first let us see about the inedible poultry byproducts. As we all know, India is producing about 10.25 million ton meat per year, including all the species, in which the poultry alone is contributing about 4.78 million ton, which is about 50% of the total meat produced. Now, from this poultry industry, which is most modernized and well organized today, we get on an average about 70 to 75% as dressing yield or edible meat, and remaining around 25 to 30% is the inedible byproduct. So this inedible byproduct comprising of blood, head, feathers, GI tract and the shanks. So altogether it is about 25 to 30%. So this amount we need to utilize properly to make the poultry farming more profitable and economic. Now among these, the feather is a very huge quantity, which is about 7%, and it is having a very high potential for economic utilization. Normally it is not easy and normally it is not utilized properly nowadays. So sometimes if it is not disposed of properly and thrown, it creates a huge environmental hazards. Now first let us have a brief detail about the edible poultry byproducts. So firstly, they are the edible offals like liver, gizzard and heart after proper cleaning. So sometimes we call them giblet, and all these three together can make about 5% of the dressed carcass. So in modern broiler marketing, skin is often removed. So skin becomes a byproduct. But when it is from the hygienic processing, properly handled, collected and stored, then this can becomes a edible byproduct which we can process into other useful items that I will discuss later. Similarly, broiler carcass contains approximately about 15% skin. So when we remove the skin for selling the meat, this is a huge quantity, so this need to be properly utilized. That's what I'm going to talk later. And in this skin we have about 50% fat and about 3% collagen. So this collagen can be processed for better use or collagen hydrolyzate or making gelatin. Then in the modern meat processing, to prepare the ready to eat meat products, many times the bone is removed to get boneless meat. So in that process the chicken bones become the byproduct, but it is from the healthy dressed carcass, hygienically processed and kept, so it can be used as edible byproducts. So we will see how to use these bones. And finally the shanks or the legs of poultry, They are also a delicacy in other countries, but here we will see how to use them. Now let us discuss about the utilization of edible poultry byproducts. As I mentioned earlier, what are the edible byproducts from poultry industry, especially the offals and sometimes the skin and the fat along with that. So first of all, to utilize them, we need to apply the innovative techniques to develop appealing and diverse products. So that's a modern way for value addition or valorization and making these byproducts more economic. So one of the approach is incorporating these edible offals in processed products and promote valorization. So like gizzard, liver, heart, all these things we can very well use in the processed products or in the ready to eat meat products, or we can process them separately independently and make use of them. Few of them we are going to discuss. And the next approach is value added processing methods. Modern and new methods such as dehydration, we can dry them and make them shelf stable and develop specific products. Or fermentation we can go for, like making pickles etc. from gizzard. And all these new approaches can improve their marketability and more economic return from these edible byproducts. And finally, there are some modern advanced processing technologies such as enzymatic hydrolysis, extraction of fats like skin, we can extract the fat, or from the skin we can make separate the collagen or collagen hydrolysates, or we can make gelatin from the skin. So some of all these aspects we are going to discuss. As I mentioned, there are new approaches for processing the edible byproducts to add value, and can be small scale industries or entrepreneurship can be taken up. So here we will discuss about the use of bones and liver. I mentioned that when we want to make ready to eat further processed chicken products, the bones will come as a byproduct. So these bones can be used by different ways. In this case, one of the edible uses, we can boil and make broth, or from that we can make soup. Similarly, the head and shank also can be processed hygienically and we can make soup. So these products we have made in our laboratories, the bone soup or head and shank soup. Another important edible byproduct is the liver. So normally it goes with the meat, but if we can process it, it will fetch a better value and better economic return. So in our laboratory we have prepared the liver spread or liver paste. So this is a very easy and simple process. We can just autoclave or pressure cook the liver, and then we can add some condiments and spices and make a paste, and it can be packaged and stored and marketed. So this can be used as a spread in the bread or as a sandwich, or it can be used for many other purposes. Otherwise, the liver can also be fried and made into a separate specialty product like chicken liver pepper fry, and that can be marketed in a better way for more economic return. Now among the edible byproducts, in case of chicken, the gizzard is a good quantity. So normally people don't like it much to use as meat. So there has been a lot of research at different laboratory about the utilization of gizzard, and one of the common development is the preparation of gizzard pickle, and that gives a shelf life of long time under atmospheric condition or ambient temperature. So here the gizzards are boiled under pressure cooker after cleaning and cutting into smaller pieces, and then they are fried or deep fried, and then along with spices and condiments further it is fried, and finally we can add the vinegar and make gizzard pickle. So this is a delicate item and very popular in many consumers or in Western countries. Similarly, we have done some other research for using this gizzard in making the chicken blocks. So the chicken, deboned chicken, after curing, we can partially grind it, and along with that the minced gizzard can be mixed, and then we can fill in mold and steam cook it, and finally we can have a cooked chicken block in which up to 10% of this gizzard can be added, and that gives a better color also, and it becomes a very good utilization of gizzard in the ready to eat meat product from the chicken. Here we can see use of skin in a snacks. So in southern India especially, it is popular, that is called murukku, where it is cereal powders like rice powder along with some pulses powder. A batter is prepared and then it is extruded through a manually operating extruder and fried in oil to get a very special snacks. Now in these snacks in our laboratory we have made a small work by adding the skin powder. So chicken skin, which is available from the marketing as a hygienic way, can be used for edible purpose. So they are first cleaned and fat is removed and then dried and made into powder. So this powder up to 7.5% in this batter of murukku we have added and found to be suitable and acceptable. So this can be a good way for utilizing this chicken skin in a simple technology. Here we will discuss another way of using the chicken skin, that is the edible category of chicken skin, by rendering. So this work done under a project by a IVRI scientist, Dr. Rajiv Kumar. It is from his personal sharing. I am putting it here. So this chicken skin should be cleaned thoroughly and it should be minced. After that it can be homogenized and it can undergo a small scale rendering. So in this rendering the high temperature and pressure is applied. All the fats will be melted like oil and this oil can be separated by centrifugation. And now this oil can be used for edible category as a margarine, and the remaining part, that is the fat free portion, can be used for other edible purpose or making the chicken products, etc. Now the fat extracted from the rendering of skin, so if it is separated, that can be used directly in the making of batter like chicken batter or emulsion we say, to prepare the emulsion type of products, or the fat free portion also can be used separately as a collagen and that can add the protein either way, and this pure fat can be used for cooking purpose or frying purposes of different products. So this is another way of utilizing the chicken skin edible category. Here we will see under the same project preparation of collagen from the edible skin. So details can be obtained from this IVRI scientist. So here the defatted skin I have mentioned earlier, from that we can make collagen as a special product. So first the other impurities should be removed and then one more defatting should be done to remove the further residual fat. Then there is a step of demineralization by acid treatment, and finally there will be a special collagen extraction by chemical solvents, and later we can have the filtration and precipitation and then centrifugation for further purification, and then we can get the precipitated almost purified collagen. So this collagen has got different uses in edible and other industrial purpose. As I mentioned in the previous one, for the purification, extraction and purification of collagen, here we can see the industrial use of this collagen. As firstly it can be used in the processed meat products I mentioned earlier. This collagen can be used in cosmetics or in the wound burn dressing, that is the collagen sheet is specially prepared. Collagen scaffolds can be made, and casings, the synthetic casings by using this collagen can be prepared as collagen casings. It can be used for making the collagen sponge in the surgical applications, or it is used as a dietary supplements where it is further processed to collagen hydrolysates. It can be used in meat jellies, or it can be further processed and converted to gelatin, and gelatin has many uses which we will see again. Now here briefly we will talk about the gelatin extraction. I have discussed details in the lecture for utilization of bones and to make gelatin long before, and recently I have made a details lecture about the preparation of gelatin. So here briefly I will say the collagen is converted to gelatin by thermohydrolysis. Normally collagen will have three different chains, that is the alpha, beta and gamma chain. The process is first to remove the non-collagenous protein, because collagen alone can be converted to gelatin by this process. So the non-collagenous protein should be removed first, then it will be treated with acid, alkali or sometime enzymes, and then it will undergo a thermohydro extraction. So by the long treatment at a controlled temperature, collagen will be converted to gelatin, and there it is undergoing a kind of hydrolysis. The collagen bonds or the cross linkages will be broken and it become partially hydrolyzed and more soluble, and it will absorb the water also. So finally it will be available in the water, but this extraction is done at different temperature from 60 to 100 degree. When the temperature is low, we get good quality gelatin. When the temperature is high, we get poor quality gelatin, and then it is called glue. Here we will see briefly about the extraction of gelatin from collagen. So first step is rendering of the minced skin at 50 degree. So this is actually degreasing. The clean skin, first it will be minced and then it will be heat treated at 50 degree to remove the fat. Then there is a acid treatment of the defatted skin, and then only it is ready for extraction of gelatin, which is done at a 60 degree Celsius at water bath for 6 hours, and then we will get the gelatin in the water, and that should be filtered, and then it will be dried at hot air oven, and finally we can get a gelatin film or gelatin sheet, and we can get a ground gelatin powder also. So this is briefly about the extraction of gelatin from the chicken skin. In a brief. Here we will briefly discuss about the extraction of collagen and gelatin from chicken feet. Earlier I have mentioned that chicken feet is many times used in Southeast Asian countries for edible purpose, and it's like a delicacy. So there they will boil it and remove the outer epithelial layer, and then further they will wash and boil for a longer time, and then it gets gelatinized and it's consumed like that. But we can also extract the gelatin from this chicken feet. So first it should be soaked in acidic solution of 0.1 normal HCl. Then it will be almost 24 hours soaked in acid. Then it will be further washed, and then it will undergo extraction at a hot water starting from 65 degree to 95 degree Celsius. Now this extracted gelatin will be in the solution and it should be filtered, and then we will get the gelatin and it will be further concentrated and dried, sometime freeze dried, and then we will get the gelatin powder. So far we have been discussing about the utilization of edible byproducts. Now we will discuss about the utilization of inedible byproducts. So in this we have the inedible skin when it is not stored properly. We have the GI tract, legs, head, all these things when it is discarded, and feather is also there a huge amount, and sometimes they remove the skin along with feather as a sleeves. So all this thing becomes a huge quantity inedible byproduct, as I mentioned, about 25 to 30%. So we will briefly discuss about the utilization of these inedible byproducts from the poultry industry. Here we will discuss about the utilization of sleeves, that is the skin with feather when it is removed. So how to utilize them, separate them and make them useful. So these are done in a project in IVRI, as I mentioned earlier. So first these poultry sleeves from retail shop, it is collected and then it is soaked in 5% salt solution, and then these are thoroughly cleaned and washed. After that they are undergoing some special customized treatment for separating the feathers from the skin. Now after this we can see the separated skin and the poultry feather. Now the skin alone will undergo further treatments for preparation of either collagen or collagen hydrolysate or gelatin of non-edible category, and feather will be processed further for different use, which we are going to see next. Here we can see briefly the approach for utilization of the chicken skin with feathers. So first the skin and feather is separated as I have mentioned earlier. After that the skin will be further cleaned and the fat can be separated, and from that remaining skin we can make either collagen or gelatin. So the skin part we will get chicken fat, collagen and gelatin, and in the feather part we can go for using the feather meal or as a fertilizer or modern processing for separating the keratin and then later keratin hydrolysate. This has got a very special use in biomedical industry. There is a lot of advancements and details about it. Maybe at a later time I will make a separate lecture. I have a lot of details about this processing and utilization of feather, especially as keratin hydrolysate in the biomedical industry. As we are discussing about the processing and utilization of non-edible poultry byproducts, so one of the best way is rendering, including all the poultry byproducts like GI tract, head, legs, feather, blood, everything together can be processed by continuous rendering or batch rendering, by preferably the dry rendering method. All this we have discussed in earlier lecture. I have a separate lecture on dry rendering plant and another lecture on rendering process. So in this case we can see in this diagram there is a flow of operations in a continuous method of dry rendering, especially for here we are discussing the mixed poultry byproducts, or sometime after processing everything together we can get a meal that is called poultry byproducts meal. So here all these byproducts will be loaded and processed step by step at a high temperature and pressure, and finally there will be a melting of fat, high pressure and temperature and sterilization, and after all the processing it will undergo dehydration by opening the valve, and finally when the processing is over it will be unloaded in a percolating tank where the fat will be separated and it will be packed separately, and this processed material if required it will be further dried outside in oven or cabinet drying, and then it will be milled into final product like poultry byproduct meal. So this poultry byproduct meal has got several use which I will be discussing later. So previously I mentioned the preparation of poultry byproducts meal. So we will see the scope of using it for pet foods. So in India the pet food market is huge and about 20,000 crore and growing at around 6%. And India imported pet food worth of 900 crore in 21, and the pet owners are increasingly feeling the concern about the rising cost and quality of commercially available pet foods. That means this is one industry where there is a lot of scope to utilize these poultry byproducts for making the special pet foods. Further, most of the pet foods are prepared based on cereals, which is generally deficient in some of the essential nutrients, especially the essential amino acids or essential fatty acids. So here is the scope for animal byproducts or especially poultry byproducts meal to fulfill this gap, like providing the better nutrients, more essential amino acids and more essential fatty acids. Moreover, when these pet foods are prepared with cereal based ingredients, there is a challenge of meeting the standards, particularly for palatability, digestibility, safety and the nutritional requirements. So here is a scope for poultry byproducts meal to use in making pet foods. So here I will briefly explain about the preparation of poultry byproducts meal. One of my student has done his master's work in National Meat Research Institute in Hyderabad. We can see that poultry byproducts meal mixed together are loaded in a rendering machine, and then it is processed and the fat is separated, and then it is separate fat and the solid part is dried and made into meals. In this picture we can see the poultry byproducts meal, which we have used for making a poultry snack or poultry treat. So in this work we have used the mixed poultry byproducts meal for making pet snack through the extrusion process. So as we all know, extrusion is a modern processing where there is cooking and sterilization and followed by molding through a small opening and giving a desired shape. Depending on the use of mold, different shape we can use. So we can see right side in a small video about its processing. So normally extrusion is used for the manufacture of dry pet food, and about 95% of the dry pet foods are using this extrusion process, and this process helps in modifying the sensory attributes of the snacks or pet foods by improving the flavor and appearance and increasing the friability, crispiness and hardness compared to the baked products. So normally baked pet foods will not have this advantage. Further, it effectively kills the pathogenic microorganism, and so it will not have any effect on the digestibility. So this extrusion method is a very suitable method for making the pet food by using the cereal ingredients and adding the animal origin ingredients like poultry byproducts meal to prepare this special pet snack we have prepared, and we are going to see it further. So here we can see that pet snack we have prepared by using different level of this poultry byproducts meal up to 15%, and this was a storage study and palatability study was done in Hyderabad, and finally the suitable technology is transferred to the industry for commercial production. So this is a success story for making the poultry byproducts meal and using it in a poultry pet snack. Here briefly I will highlight the novelty of this product. So it is a most economic utilization of the waste or byproducts, and to make the cost of this product cheaper, and this particular product is somewhat new snack formula. Normally in case of poultry pet foods will have the total nutritional requirements, but in this case it is only for a partial requirement, so complete nutritional requirement need not be fulfilled from this pet snack, and it helps in avoiding the environmental pollution and making the poultry industry more economic. So this is available as a new technology. We can see a packet in the top right corner. Here we will talk another aspect of byproduct utilization for making biodiesel. So this is a technology already patented from Kerala by a veterinary scientist named Dr. John Abraham. Probably we all know him. So in the 2018 National Biofuel Policy already outlined that up to 10% of this bioethanol can be blended in petrol by 2022. So ethanol blended program. This is a special program for adding 10% of bioethanol in petrol, and based on that, in this process biofuel can be prepared from chicken sleeves. Earlier I have mentioned that chicken sleeves where the skin and feather together it is removed. So this sleeve part, if we undertake rendering in hot water followed by trans-esterification. So by rendering we can separate the fat, and this fat can undergo trans-esterification by treating with potassium hydroxide and methanol. So finally we can get biodiesel or bioethanol, and that will have a yield of about 7 to 11% biodiesel on dry weight basis, and this is a good opportunity for utilization of poultry byproducts to make biodiesel. Now we will talk briefly about the utilization of chicken feather, and later we may have a separate lecture only on the advanced technologies for extraction and hydrolysis of keratin and application in biomedical industry. So in the right side, let us see, as per the livestock census 2019, from the poultry industry about 70% will get meat, and 23% as the other byproduct, and 7% is feather. That is about the broiler industry. So India produces about 4.8 or up to 5 million metric ton of chicken, and from that the feather makes about 7% of the broiler chicken. So this feather is composed of 90% as structural protein, that is keratin, which is a very complex and special category. So this keratin can be hydrolyzed and made into very useful technologies for biomedical, that we will discuss details later. Here we will briefly discuss about the use of feather for feather meal or hydrolyzed feather meal and its use. So here briefly we will discuss about the preparation of feather meal, particularly when it is coming along with skin, that is the sleeves I told, when the skin is removed along with the feather. So these whole things need to be washed in tap water and remove the blood, etc. Maybe we can use some detergent. Then it is soaked in vinegar overnight, and then we can manually remove the feather from the skin, and finally we can wash the feather in fresh water and drying, and then there can be a grinding to make the uniform size of feather meal. So this is the normal feather meal. There is no other hydrolysis, etc. So same thing can be done directly the feather when we get, or when we get it along with the skin. Now earlier I have mentioned about the preparation of feather meal in a simple way, but actually this feather meal is not very good for livestock feeding because it has got very poor digestibility. So to make it digestible, there is a special treatment to make it hydrolyzed. So in case of normal rendering, the feather should be added with water, and it should be specially treated at a very high temperature and pressure for a separate phase, maybe about 1 hour. That will cause hydrolysis in the keratin, and then it becomes somewhat suitable to use in the livestock. So that is called hydrolyzed feather meal. Whereas nowadays there is a more modern method for making the hydrolyzed feather meal with a special physicochemical treatment or enzymatic treatment or isoelectric precision treatment, and after that there will be decontamination and centrifugation, then harvesting and grinding and storage. So that's another way of making the hydrolyzed feather meal. Here I will briefly talk about the use of feather meal in pet food. So in general, if we include the feather meal, it may affect negatively about the digestibility of crude protein, gross energy and metabolizable energy. That's a normal feather meal as I mentioned earlier. But if we can hydrolyze it, so by enzymes, if we hydrolyze it, improve the digestibility of energy in the feather meal. So when feather meal we want to use in pet food, it can be used up to 10% level with other protein, and that shows good clinical and metabolic performance in rabbits. Now recently there is a report about the use of hydrolyzed keratin in pet foods with a better result. So these are some of the scope for using the feather meal in pet foods. Now we are at the end of today's lecture. So today especially we have discussed about the utilization of poultry byproducts. So first we have discussed what are the edible and non-edible poultry byproducts, and then we have discussed about the utilization of edible poultry byproducts like gizzard or fat or liver, and then we have discussed specially about the utilization of poultry sleeves where the skin is removed along with the feather. So if we hygienically collect the skin, that can be processed properly to collect the edible fat, and remaining part can be used for making collagen or collagen hydrolysate or to extract gelatin. Then later we have discussed about the use of non-edible byproducts either we can use them separately or as a together. So from non-edible part also we can get the skin and make the fat or gelatin or collagen for other industrial use, or all the poultry byproducts together we can process through rendering and make the poultry byproducts meal. This poultry byproducts meal can be used for adding in the pet foods or in the livestock. And finally we have discussed about the feather alone. So we can make feather meal or hydrolyzed feather meal, and this hydrolyzed feather meal to some extent it can be added in the pet foods. However, this feather alone can be further, we have a separate lecture with a special category like extraction of keratin and then hydrolysis of keratin, and that can be used for making so many biomedical products including the cosmetics and other supplements and surgical materials, etc. So that we will discuss separately. Thank you.